Good morning.
Good morning.
I think we'll go ahead and get started. It's 8:01. And so we're here at Flex Day and can't believe it's 2024. Competency Based Education, otherwise known as CBE, is our topic at hand, and our title is Converting Mastery into Credit Earned. We've got folks on Zoom. Can everybody hear me okay? Some thumbs up. We're all good? Cool. All right. If you're having any issues, be sure to let us know, okay? Probably the easiest thing is chat, right? We got Alondra here who's gonna try to take care of that stuff for us. I'll go ahead and get started. Thank you. Oh. There we go. All right. Well, my name is Brian Lee. As of 2 days ago, my official title was High Road Construction Careers, or HRCC coordinator. My job over the next couple years, we think, will be to try and introduce competency-based education to the college, and also CPL, credit for prior learning. So those are our two primary goals, and we're working under a grant, and that's why it's called High Road Construction Careers. That's the name of the grant. I was an HVAC constructor in not so long ago previous life, and I've taught at the college here since 2000. Well, actually, I started as a adjunct instructor. I think in like 2008 or something like that, and then started full-time in 2015. With me today, co-hosting is James Thornburg. And did I say that right? Thornburg, yeah. Yep, sure is. Doctor. Yeah, Thornburg. And let's take a moment and introduce yourself.
Everyone, my name is James Thornburg. This is my third year full-time here at Flex City. I was part of an adjunct in CIT back in like 07, 09. Then I went to Merced College in 09 all the way until 21 when I came here. Kind of in the process, I did an ED, and I just started learning more about competency-based ed and all the things. And I try to do what's called the Emporium model, which is a form of CBE at Merced like 11 years ago. But because of some of the things we'll talk about today, the back end stuff is kind of complex, and they didn't want to go for it, as you kind of see. So I'm trying to see how we can actually get this going now. You'll see there's lots of options, and part of getting there is navigating how we're going to do it as a college and everything. So I'm excited to see where it goes from here.
Thanks, James. Going forward, so feel free to ask questions as we go. Get as much interaction as we can. If you're on Zoom, use the chat window. Alondra here is going to let me know if there's a chat question. So, if you want to be recognized here in this room, it would be best to do a cartwheel. So if you could do that, that'd be cool. If you can't do a cartwheel, your hand's okay too. But anyway, a little bit about CBE. James just covered where he came from and where his interest was drawn to competency-based education. My background, I sold a company. I sold a big chunk of a company in 2012. And what I figured out, I basically had worked myself out of a job, and I was 45, and I was essentially unemployed with passive income. And so, but I knew it was too young to retire. I really thought I was going to be able to go do something. I had been self-employed for 25 years, so I really wasn't interested in self-employment. And I started applying, and what I found was nobody cared. that I had ran this company and built it up and sold it off. And it really wasn't as valuable as I thought it was. So I thought, well, I'm gonna have to go get a degree because that seems to be what's important to some of these folks. Kind of had my eye on Fresno City College. I'd already been involved there, but wasn't sure where all that was going. Anyway, I found myself at a institution called WGU, Western Governors University. What attracted me to it was the cost. It was $3,000 a semester at the time. And it was, I had unlimited ability to move through courses. I had to work through a system, but I could go from course to course to course. And ultimately what I discovered was I was able, with 25 years of business experience, I was able to earn a business degree, a bachelor's degree in 2 years. And I thought it was a pretty phenomenal program. And Western Governors University started this concept. There were 7 governors who actually started WGU. And we'll look at that briefly in a few minutes. But WGU was the organization, the institution that really got competency-based education, CBE, going. So it was pretty phenomenal for me, and it's a passionate subject for me, and that's what attracted me to taking on this position and doing a little transfer and getting out of the HVAC business once and for all. So that's where I come from and why CBE interests me. And by the way, yesterday, my Dean Barabee, she caught one of my slides where I had inserted CBD as in David, not CBE. So if I have a little faux pas, no, I'm not talking about marijuana-based drugs. So it was just a faux pas. I don't know where that came from. So, anyway, okay, so what is CBE? So it's a focus on what is needed for a certificate or degree holder to be successful in a professional or civic setting. Now, in that description, which was written by Lori Dodge, in that description, I think the most important part of that is the words to be successful in a professional or civic setting. So, and what the message being sent there by Ms. Dodge is that that's where the education needs to start. And I think we all know that, right? As educators, we know that ultimately we're trying to shape students so that they can go get that job and have a viable career. But in CBE, there's an extra emphasis on that. She goes on to say there's things that are important are theory, skills, abilities, dispositions, and application. So if you kind of look at all 5 of those words, we're talking about a pretty big picture. We're not talking about just the skill. And I think the key word there is dispositions. So very often a student may have a skill. They may be able to actually do the skill, but to do it in front of somebody else or to take a skill and really use it in an effective way out on a job site or in a work setting it can be quite different. So, and I saw that as an employer throughout my career. People that were smart and they had the ability, but they had an inability to execute. And so, so I think that's what she's talking about there. In this next lengthy description from the Council of Regional Accrediting Commissions, I won't read the whole thing, but well, maybe I have to. So an outcome-based approach to earning a college degree or other credential. Competencies are statements of what students can do as a result of their learning at an institution of higher education. While competencies can include knowledge or understanding, they primarily emphasize what students can do with their knowledge. Students progress through degree or credential programs by demonstrating competencies specified at the course and or program level. The curriculum is structured around these specified competencies and satisfactory competencies, because competencies are often anchored to external expectations. So it's kind of clear there. We're talking about what would industry expect? If, and it really doesn't matter what that industry might be. Now, I come from the trade, so, you know, if I'm going to hire somebody out of a school, I expect them to be able to do certain things in air conditioning. On the other hand, I can only imagine that if I'm, say, a publisher, well, perhaps my expectation of a student that was coming to work for me would be the ability to maybe write a small book. I don't know, being presumptive there, but hopefully you get that idea. So then it goes on to say, to pass a competency, students must generally perform at a level considered to be very good or excellent. Now that's another key point here, very good or excellent. Now we've got this little problem that's always been there in the in our current system, where we're basically allowing students to utilize time, right? And with time, they learn certain things. Some things they learn better, and other things not so much. And then we give them a letter grade for that. Now, one of the issues here can be that, you know, they have an overall breadth of knowledge, but maybe there was one subject that they really should have been stronger with. And because we work in a laws of averages in our grading, that one thing that really they should be stronger on, because that's what was important to the employer, maybe holds them back when it's time to actually go get that job. Maybe on that particular subject matter, they got a D, or maybe they got a C when they should have had an A. Now, they did better in other subject matter, and in that other subject matter, they were strong. But where it counted the most, they fell short. And now they're having trouble functioning in that workplace. I saw that as an employer too over my years. So looking at what was said here, very good or excellent. In other words, if we're going to identify this competency that is going to be wanted by an employer, let's do all that we can to make sure they can execute on every level. Right? So one of the things we're going to find is that in order to get through a competency-based system or program, the standard is pretty high, and it's essentially a pass-fail. So we'll explore that some more. This means that hopefully we will not put ourselves in a position where the student leaves the program and they don't have all of the tools that were necessary to land that job and be successful in the job. All it takes is one thing, just one thing in a job interview, just one thing in the first week of employment where, you know, it's identified, oh, they can't do that. Well, it turns out that was the most important thing for that employer. And the next thing you know, they're being laid off. That was in my trade, you get laid off, right? 2 months later, you're laid off. Well, the employer probably could have kept you working, but it's easier to lay you off when things get a little slow, right? And very often that can be because we couldn't execute at one point. And so the idea here is to not allow that to occur. All right, so moving on. I liked this description for what is CBE. It was actually a sales brochure that I ran across on the internet for a college, a private college that's using CBE. And by the way, private colleges have adopted CBE on a much greater scale than public colleges have. And I think maybe that's something that we should think about. because private industry usually leads the way, right? And so school is school, right? The teacher explains a concept, you do a little additional reading, do some practice work, and then take tests every few weeks until the class ends. Sound familiar? Then rinse and repeat for another course. For those familiar with the routine, it may come as a surprise that an alternative approach to education is gaining popularity. Competency-based education. It's a sales piece, so there was another paragraph, and then it's followed up by this paragraph. Competency-based education is a method of academic instruction and evaluation based upon students demonstrating their mastery of a subject. This method focuses on having students show what they know and applying the concepts they've learned to evaluations that show they've truly grasped the subject. Now, there's another key word, truly. Truly grasp the subject. They're going to go into that employer truly understanding what it is that they're being asked to do. So I think that really gets to the heart of it, right? And it's written in simple terms. Any questions so far? Making sense? Makes sense. All right. So any chat questions? Good. Okay. So let's define competency. The ability to demonstrate a system or sequence of behavior that is functionally related to attaining a performance goal. But what is their performance goal? At a student level, what is their performance goal? What do you think?
It's a grade. Right now it's a grade. Yeah.
Right now it's a grade. Okay. Does that necessarily, what's their goal once they graduate?
Performance.
Performance, and what are they going to get if they perform? A job, right? So their performance is really important. Our second quote here, a competency is the ability to apply or use a set of related knowledge, skills, abilities, and intellectual behaviors required to successfully perform tasks in a defined setting. Let's pick on intellectual behavior there a little bit. What does that mean to you? To me, what that means is that's that point of execution where you really pull all the pieces together. You know, in HVAC, we have this thing called evacuation, or some people call it dehydration of the refrigerant circuit. It's basically applied physics. We have to understand how water will boil in a vacuum. And when you're having trouble evacuating a refrigerant circuit, you need to understand how that process works in order to figure out what's wrong, right? And this is where a student may have gone through the process in school of learning how to evacuate a refrigerant circuit. But when they go to execute on the third system they do it on, they have trouble and they don't understand how it works. And the consequence is the journeyman who is standing next to them, who is thinking, he doesn't know what he's doing, right? And the way my trade works, and I think a lot of careers work, a lot of different industries, you know, you're working under somebody and we've got the formal process, then you have the informal process of evaluation. Hey, Johnny, what do you think about that new guy, right? Well, right? That's essentially the job interview. That's reality, right? Or not interview, evaluation, right? So those details matter, especially in the first couple weeks of employment, from my perspective as an ex-employer. Last, a competency is the capability to apply or use a set of related knowledge, skills, abilities, and intellectual behaviors required to successfully perform tasks in a defined setting. So I think that one pretty much encompasses the first two. This little graphic here, probably hard for you guys to see here in the room. Hopefully the online people can see it better. It basically just graphically describes this sort of thinking. But we'll go ahead and move on. So in your discipline, demonstration of which task, product, process, or function would demonstrate a competent graduate ready to work in an industry. Uh-oh, got my first typo. So I just tried to pull some out of my noggin when I put this together. Architect? Well, would a complete set of building plans demonstrate mastery? If you could do that, if that student could actually, they might be a relatively simple home, but to actually create a complete set of building plans, would that qualify? Would that demonstrate and provide that breadth of knowledge so that they could perform in that first 2 weeks of employment for an architect somewhere? How about English? I mentioned it earlier. Well, could we write a book? Is that possible? Could you proofread somebody else's book? I don't know. It's not my gig, but it seems logical to me. That might be something that would be, you could be measured against. Information technology. I learned this morning that information technology is technically just networking. So I had written perhaps a mobile app or software. Well, it turns out that's a programmer. All right. So, but if you're going to be hired as a programmer, what do they expect you to do as an employer? Program something, right? And it should be pretty complex because just about anything that the employer is going to hand them will be complex. It has to be because they're competing in a real world, right? So that employer is not going to give that programmer something simple to start with. They're going to have something difficult. And I know that firsthand knowledge. My son-in-law, he got dumped into a world of programming and he really struggled because what he learned in school was way less complicated than what they were doing in the real world. Electrical engineering. What if the student were to design and build an electronic gadget? Would that do it? How complex would that gadget need to be? Manufacturing, there you go, Mark. Calibrate and set the manufacturing line. Now, I have no idea what I'm talking about there. And that may or may not be possible or practical from an economic perspective, funding required for the program. But maybe you could use the facility of an employer to actually make that final assessment as to what competence would be for that student. And business, when I was in the business program, I had to write a comprehensive business plan. And it was comprehensive, 200 pages long, as I recall. And we'll see later that the way WGU evaluated my business plan was pretty complex and it was in-depth. All right, any questions? All right, we'll move on. So if you're not sure, and you couldn't have trouble answering that question, just maybe think about this a little bit. What do employers want your students to do when they go to work after graduating from the program? And I would also suggest, what would they expect them to do 6 months after they've started? What is that employer probably going to ramp them up to, right? Maybe we should prepare them for that. What competency would make your students clearly stand out and capable, ready to work? In business, over 25 years, boy, oh boy, did I ever learn the value of differentiation. I sold my company really because of one thing that I did. At one point, I developed a 144-minute service guarantee. I went out on a limb and I told everybody, all of my clientele and anybody that would listen, you sign up for a service plan with us, we'll guarantee 144 minutes service. So now the idea was, hey, we're going to have to jockey some technicians around. They'll have to find their way pretty quick over to that home or business to get there in 144 minutes. By the way, why 144 minutes? Because you would ask, it's marketing, right? It went nuts. Why? Nobody else was willing to do it. Nobody else could do it. So that's the value in differentiation. Our students need to have a differentiating skill set too. And the comparison in that case would be, what's everybody else doing? You know, for me, they're producing students over at IoT. They're producing students at COS. They're producing students in Kalinga. So there's competition, right? And our students have to be better than those students from a skill perspective, communication, all those things that matter. So now for some of you, you're probably thinking, well, I already do this, right? I'm focused on what my employer wants. Congratulations, because you're halfway there. You've been doing CBE all along, right? That's exactly where you should be. So that's great if you're there. All right. Any questions? All good? Yes, sir.
What would be your suggestion if you were wanting to add, say, a CBE topic into your syllabus by Monday? So,
All right, so first of all, should probably say that we don't have CBE instituted in the college yet. I would love to talk to you after the show here. And I have to get on to another one, but I'd love to get your name and email address and so forth today. And I'll contact you next week because we're looking for programs that are interested in adoption of CBE.
yeah,
Okay.
I'm just curious how to start the process.
Yeah, and go ahead.
Your existing SLOs and objectives.
Yeah.
Those should be what they're supposed to be doing by the end of class. Those are the indicators of what they should do. So it's there. CBE is the process in which you can break from the traditional semester cycle and ensure mastery of those things.
It's like when you get into a curriculum report, you get a piece here under objectives. You get a piece here under, say, a lecture outline or an SLO, but it's not really tied together under CBE.
Right. CBE is not, this piece is about information and building CBE at the college and elsewhere.
And
So, yeah.
I'm over at instruction and architecture.
Okay, good. Well, we're definitely working with construction already. And we're going to be working towards development. And Rico's already agreed that would be something that construction would be interested in. So things are all already underway. James had good advice though. Your SLO is really where you can start right now, right? Now I'll give you an example. In the HVAC program, there are let's see, there's 5 classes that have to be completed in order to get a certificate of completion. Each one of those SLOs represents a task that is associated with, a piece of the industry. Each one of those tasks really are not connected to they're not going by themselves. They're not going to truly demonstrate competence. So example, I might be able to explain and identify different types of motors, but that doesn't mean I can go diagnose a motor, right? So a better SLO would be the ability to identify and diagnose motors. And if I wanted to make that even larger, on a program level, I should be able to encompass all the motors in an air conditioner. And my SLO would have to do with everything that's inside that box, right? So that would be a program SLO, which is something that's on paper right now. But with CBE, we would begin the process of actually having a class that's all about that final program SLO, which should be that big picture that employer really wants. That make sense?
It does.
So I'll be glad to help you though. Okay? Yeah, Mark.
So.
Uh-oh, got the so. So you started with so. That's not
how
good.
it can be this succinct,
Yeah.
but we had a competency based education program.
Where?
A huge one. We had it.
Here?
Yes.
Okay.
not on this campus, but at CTC.
Oh, it's CTC, yeah.
So it wasn't perfect. It wasn't quite what you're talking about here.
Mhm.
It needed tweaking, but it's been systematically just decommissioned.
Okay,
It's lost. So there's only one program left.
so did you like it? That's my first question. Oh, by the way, for those with Zoom, the question, if you're not here, is everybody hearing these questions from the audience okay? All right. So I won't repeat them, but if you're starting to have trouble hearing the questions, feel free to reach out and I'll start repeating them, okay? So my first question is, did you like it? 'Cause I'm curious.
Well,
Did you like the way that worked?
I'm liking the way it works.
Yeah.
Because I'm now teaching in
Yeah.
that situation. Being on the main campus, it was kind of like, that was
Right.
those other people. And, but, it, as was written, as it was started years ago, a couple decades ago.
Yeah.
It was really phenomenal and it had a lot of, success.
Good.
But academia didn't like it.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of, and I'm seeing it right now, going to meetings that how do we put this square peg in
In a
a
round
round hole?
Yep.
And they're like, yeah, this isn't.
I'll tell you how we do it. First of all, to answer your question, CBE is in Title V. So,
Right.
but it's direct assessment. Direct assessment for 4 credit programs only. So it's in Title V, direct assessment. So at this point, CBE, as per the California Community College system, is being directed towards 4 credit programs. Now, your program is currently 4 credit, right? So now, as far as,
No, we're non-credit.
oh, you're non-credit. I thought you were 4 credit. If you were 4 credit, we could begin the process of trying to work you that direction. So, and so in time, we hope to do that. Fit that square peg in a round hole, because there are some inherent differences, that's for sure. Okay, and administratively and from the perspective of transcripts, especially, it really, and also scheduling and the way things are done there. And we don't have to adopt CBE like as a whole, right? We don't have to take the model, say with WGU, which I think is pretty great, but we don't have to take all of it. We can take pieces of it, right? Because it's the right thing to do. And so hopefully that answered your question for now. But I think my first.
It's a long conversation though.
Yeah.
I'll take it now.
Okay, so but think about 4 credit going forward. Okay, if you want to go this direction.
You're at the halfway point.
What's that?
Halfway point.
Halfway point, thank you. All right, so Title V. That's by what authority? There is a statewide 8-college pilot ongoing to the community college system. The work I'm doing is directed towards applied technology division, but we're also open to inquiries for other programs outside of the division, help you any way I can. Okay? All right, CBE history. I'm going to kind of zoom through this. Group of U.S. senators, already talked about that. They established Western Governors University in 1997. WGU began accepting students in 1999. He successfully lobbied Congress for inclusion of direct assessment provision in the Higher Education Reconciliation Act. This is why that in the California Community College system, direct assessment has been approved. 2012, there was a article published, Cracking the Credit Hour. That was instrumental in really opening people's eyes. And by 2016, WGU was at 76,000 students. I graduated in 2013 from WGU. So at the time, I think there were 50 or 60,000 students. That's big. 2021, they're reporting 150,000 students. And we're continuing to see a resurgence of CBE as we slowly creep through this renovation. Okay, so. All right, why CBE? Equity. That's why. There's a big reason for that. So this is a little difficult to see here. So I'm gonna see if I can, you know what, I'm not gonna chance it because I don't want to spend any time. So these numbers, 20.6 million adults in California, age 25 to 64. Of these, 12.3 million adults have no college degree. 8.7 million adults have high school diplomas but no college degrees. And 4 million adults have some college credits but no degree. Now, this is concerning. About half of Black, Native American, and Pacific Islander Californians who attempted college did not complete. A lot of these people are working right now, right? But we all know that once you get into the real world, it becomes really hard, and you're working a job, it gets really hard to go back to college. You have to work within a pretty restrictive timeline, right? And one of the problems with the credit hour system is there's no consideration for what you've already learned through life experience. I had 25 years of life experience in business. So I was able to directly apply that and zoom through business programs at WGU. Now, I slowed way down when it came to the general education. I hate math. I hate math with every passion you can possibly imagine. And so, you know, math, I remember having considerable debate with my wife. I'm trying to learn algebra and she's like, just follow the rules. And yeah, I hated it. So I slowed way down to that. All right, so point is, we're leaving, we've got a whole bunch of adults and CBE is custom cut, as we're gonna find, for the adult learner. All right, more data. California adults, 25 to 44 years old with some college, but no college by race. So over half of Californians with some college, but no degree are people of color. So right up here. Adults with some college but no degree are less likely to own homes or have health insurance than those with a college degree. I think health insurance goes a long ways to, you know, moving people forward in life. It really does. All right, this last one's a little hard to see. I was going to link to the website so you could actually see it up close. But total adults age 25 to 66 population by region. I think I'll just go ahead and skip that. It's going to be too complicated here in this format. All right, there's another reason. FTES. Top secret information for you here. The college gets paid based on our FTES in part. If we don't have FTES, we get paid less. And that means less instructors work. That means less staff work. So it should be a concern. And here's why. Fresno County High School graduate projection. This is 2021. This is where we landed in 23. You'll notice we basically peaked. Now from here, and I don't know why they're thinking this, but Fresno County, the California Department of Finance believes that graduates will be down to this level by 2032. And that's in Fresno County. Now, this is an extended graduation, which is going to be even less accurate, I'm sure, going from 2033 to 2044. And you can see we're going to have quite a dip. Now, if we don't have high school graduates for this college, what happens to our FTES? We're going to have to fill that void somewhere, right? So I was a little curious about these numbers. I'm looking at these, I'm thinking, well, man, that doesn't seem, that's just really severe. And I looked at these numbers. This again, Department of Finance. This is splits the valley in two. Fresno, south, San Joaquin Valley. So Here we can see this is where we're at, and we can see the decline here. You can see decline here. And then when we go, and you can see real numbers here, less 33,796 change from one point to the other of the graph. That's what's being projected.
Is that enrollment projection or graduation?
Graduation, right? Which generally speaking, we like to see graduates coming into the college. They have a much higher opportunity for success, don't they? 6.3% to the negative is what's projected by the time we hit 2031. That's a big number. This is the northern half of the San Joaquin Valley. Now it looks a little better, not quite as bad. Enrollment change of only 257 people. So obviously to the south, that's going to hurt. And it's going to affect this college. So that's another reason to be looking at CBE, because we're going to have to fill this void. And because we can't change this demographic profile that's happening here. We'll have to dig deeper to figure out why that's happening. Maybe that's part of our purpose as a community college to help with that. All right, so if we had a program that was built for the adult learner, this would help the adult learner and help the college at the same time. And so now it's probably time to look at the characteristics of adult learners. So if you haven't paid attention, one of the things I had to really embrace, and when I earned my master's in higher education, I did it in part to understand this college. That was one of my big motivators, is why do these people do the things they do, right? It came from business. Some of the things didn't make sense. So I earned a master's. Now this was not at WGU, it was at a more traditional college. And, but one thing I learned, probably the number one thing that I learned from that master's program was the difference between a child learner and an adult learner. What I didn't understand, that the adult learner really didn't occur until they were about 25, especially for men, a little younger for women. The child learner was less than 25. Are you kidding me? That was most of my students, right? So we end up with blended program, blended classrooms, a few adult learners and a whole bunch of child learners, right? So now the child learner is going to basically need to be guided. They want to be guided. They were guided all the way through high school. They have to be walked through the process. Now, there are always exceptions, right? But by and large, that's what I've experienced. When they're young, they have to be guided. Now, the adult learner is a different animal. Number one, they're self-directed. Adults feel they need to take responsibility for their lives and decisions, and this is why it's important for them to have control over their learning. Think about it. As an adult, what did you do that, once you decided to do something, why did you do it? I'll bet the answer is because you thought it would benefit you. And you weren't going to do it unless you knew it would benefit you. Right? And once you decided to do that, you were all in. So my commentary for that quote: CBE curriculum allows the adult learner to choose whether skills must be established, improved, or simply polished, which leads to mastery. When you have passion, you're going to become a master at whatever you're working on. Practical and result-oriented. Adult learners are usually practical, resent theory, need information that can be immediately applicable to their professional needs, and generally prefer practical knowledge that will improve their skills, facilitate their work, and boost their confidence. My commentary here is well-designed CBE assessments present a clear message of practicality and immediate benefit. In other words, the assessment helps to drive them through the program because they can see the end result. Here's what I'm going to be able to do when I'm done, and here's how it's going to benefit me when I get that job. Less open-minded and therefore more resistant to change. Maturity and profound life experiences usually lead to rigidity. which is the enemy of learning. My commentary there, the ability to exercise maturity alongside lessons learned from the school of hard knocks softens resistance to change over time. Hey, I can do this. So if we give the adult learner a chance to succeed, they become motivated. And then one of the reasons they become motivated is because they recognize that everything I've done in the last 15 years actually mattered. Right? I'm able to take this accumulation of life experience and I can apply it and I can benefit from it because I'm going to get through this program faster. That means I can go get that next job faster and my family will be better off because of it. Slower learning, yet more integrative knowledge. And I'm going to move quickly here. Aging does affect learning. Adults tend to learn less rapidly with age. My comment, CBE curriculum does not limit the level of mastery that an adult learner can achieve. They can dive as deep as they wish and might find unparalleled expertise before they are done. Here's what I learned at WGU. If I thought I knew a subject, in order to get through that program, I may have known 80% of what I needed. I had to dig for the other 20%. I came out the other end better. So I felt good about my work. It wasn't a matter of just getting it done. I had to work for it, but I also got to use the 80% that I already knew, right? For me, that was a driver of persistence. Use personal experience as a resource. Both of these are kind of connected. CBE competence assessments provide opportunity for adult learners to utilize personal experience as a valuable resource. What was difficult to comprehend 10 years ago was a snap to comprehend yesterday. So what I'm trying to say there is, with our life experience, we have the ability to take on tough situations and acclimate and perform at a higher level quicker. So motivation, learning in adulthood is usually voluntary. Thus, it's a personal choice to attend school in order to improve job skills and achieve professional growth. The ability to move from course to course upon completion motivates the adult learner to persevere. Time was not wasted and rapid progress toward the goals being made. March forward. This may be one of the hardest things to deal with as a college. When I finished a course at WGU, I was able to go back to my academic coach, say, hey, I'm done with this course. I want the next one. It would assign me the next one. I was able to get through multiple 3-unit courses over the course of a couple, 3 months. I didn't have to wait and let life happen in order to get into the next course. I think that's probably key, right? Wasn't a waste of time for me. Multi-level responsibilities, flexible online access, and flexible hybrid lab schedules facilitate quality work within the boundaries of a busy life. This is important too. Whatever we do in CBE, probably going to be at least half online. Hybrid's fine, but on our hybrid side, we're going to need to make that lab accessible, right? That means it's open for set hours, right? All right, high expectations. Adult learners have high expectations. They want to be taught about things that will be useful to work. I've already kind of touched on that. That's what adult learners are all about. If it's not going to benefit me, I'm out of here, right? And this is exactly what happens in our 4-credit classes right now, right? Those adult learners are sitting there, they're thinking, why am I sitting next to this 22-year-old? Why am I learning about these things that I covered 10 years ago, right? They become demotivated and they leave. So CBE in a nutshell, time is variable, learning is fixed. Traditional credit hour system doesn't apply. Required demonstration of mastery or proficiency. Students' ability to demonstrate competency and all identified criteria is the sole determination of pass or fail. Talk about that in a minute. A learner cannot hide the lack of competence in one area by performing well in another and earning an overall passing grade. So I think if we recall our students yesterday, last semester, there was somebody in that class who got the B, who got the C, but when it comes time to perform, may not do so well. Right? I know it's happened in my class. Students that I thought, hey, they're going to do okay. A year later, still unemployed. So for me, that's bothersome. Determined by rigorous assessments. In the absence of broad selection of formative and summative assessments, CBE assessment tools must be proven as reliable and valid indicators of mastery of learning in each competency. So what that's about is it's about, since we're going to kind of make this cut and dry, you either pass or fail. And since we're being compared to other programs where time served is one of the primary components. Since we didn't serve our time necessarily because we were able to move through quickly, we better have the evidence of exactly what we learned, right? And that comes down to the assessment. Focus on the student learning journey. Now, this is one thing I saw at WGU. Students are given support throughout their journey, but a spirit of independence consistent with industry culture is encouraged by instructors. So first of all, they assign a coach, an academic coach. The academic coach would call me every week. How's it going? Right? Second, when I sought help on a particular subject, they would help me immediately. But they're not going to give me the answer, right? They're going to expect me to find that answer. They're going to guide me, right? Which is classic online learning theory, right? That's what you do when you run an online class is you're not going to give them the answer. They've got to go work for it, right? And I think for a lot of instructors, that's the in-person also. Let's see. So consistent with best practice for online instruction, instructors serve in a facilitator role. So I just covered that. Commitment to intentional construction and maintenance of the learner experience is a critical component of quality CBE program. Academic life coach. Now, we may have a hard time adopting that here, and that means that especially in the beginning role, as a instructor, and we have the tools like Starfish to really watch that student and stay in touch, right? So that may be something we have to accommodate as an instructor. When an academic life coach is not available, faculty must assume this role. So, we have the flexible self-paced approach. Move as fast as you can. Students slow down while navigating mastery of unfamiliar subject matter. They're going to speed up when the things are more familiar. They'll be amazed how fast some students will move through with 20 years experience versus in one subject, and then they get to the next subject and slow way down. Pass, no pass grading, 80% or greater in all criteria of the passing grade. So that's generally what you see. Less than 80% and one or more of any assessment criteria, the no pass or incomplete. Translating competency to the credit, our grading system is one of our greatest institutional challenges. We'll end up with dual transcripts most likely. So that's something we're going to have to work on. So this way we're demonstrating a letter grade for the purpose of satisfying the institutional norm. And then we also have our reporting of what we accomplish from a competency perspective. At WGU, if you ask for a letter grade, they're going to give you a C. Okay. But what I tell my students is, you know what? What matters to me is that you know your stuff, right? And that you can execute. And for the average employer, they're not going to go look at the transcript and say, did you have straight A's? Right? What they care about is whether or not you can perform. Ideally, except if you're applying at a city college, then transcripts matter, don't they? Ideally, the transcript also includes a list of competencies demonstrated so employers can understand the value of CBE. So, yeah, ideally, the employer gets a list of what they could do, right? All those things that were achieved. All right, this is a competency rubric with WGU. This came from my files. This is A class. It was FNT1. I don't even remember the subject, but this I'm demonstrating a fail. So notice there's 4 columns for the rubric. Says unacceptable, needs revision, meets standard, exemplary. So meets standard, you got to get a green mark and get all of those complete, right? There is no, well, that's a C, right? You either pass or you fail. Exemplary is great, but you got to meet standard, okay? If you look at and we're not going to have time to explore this in depth, but if you look at the different criteria, they're detailed, right? Articulation of response. Were they clear? Accuracy of mechanics, grammar, punctuation, ratio calculations. Did they get them right? Horizontal analysis of income statements. This was a financial class, obviously. Horizontal analysis of balance sheets. Indications, justification, industry comparison, right? These are all, if they don't compare what the employer is looking for, they got to work on it some more, right? Now here's a pass. Meet standard all the way through. This is a different class. Articulation of response, accuracy of mechanics, product support of mission statement, product classification, target market, analysis of competitive environment, strengths, that's marketing. Okay? Going to Bloom's taxonomy, and we're just about out of time. What time does this end? Is it 9 or 9? What's that?
15 minutes.
15 minutes, oh, cool. Bloom's taxonomy. Taxonomy versus CBE taxonomy. Well, you'll notice there's some differences here, or similarities, sorry. Bloom's taxonomy, typically when we're teaching, we're building that ladder and building up to creation. When we get to the point of creation, the student is really locking in that information. When they can build it, they're going to remember it, right? Leading up to that, we're remembering, we're understanding, we're applying, we're analyzing, we're evaluating, and then we're creating. We're really doing the same thing with CBE. We take our prior experience, traits, and characteristics. That's remembering and understanding. Right? Some classes, maybe more remembering, maybe more understanding. Other classes, maybe it's about life experience, right? You know, what we're talking about there is like, if you've lived life and you've had to balance a checkbook, well, at least you have some idea of what balancing a checkbook's like, right? So when you get into the finance class and they start talking about balancing money, right? You at least have an initial comprehension. When that young student, 18, 19, 20, has never balanced that checkbook, never had to pay the bills yet, well, they're going to have to comprehend what that means, right? So these are the life experiences that come with us as an adult. Skills, abilities, and knowledge, then competencies. You know, the competencies are, you know, those details. Okay, if I'm in construction, can I, you know, I remember in construction, they've got a block of wood with a bunch of nails in it. And they basically go through a process of teaching those students how to drive a nail, right? Now, that's a competency and it's probably going, but it's only one small piece, right? When they go to demonstrate, they're going to use that competency and they're going to probably use a bunch of competencies and put it all together, right? And that's where they're getting into demonstration. Well, demonstration falls right into creation. I know CBE today way better than I knew it from a detailed perspective, especially in the context of the community college system, way better today than I did 2 months ago when this job wasn't even on my radar. I had to build this presentation. Because of I built this presentation, I created, and I know CBE much better today than I did 2 months ago. I was always aware of it, but I know much more detail today. It was because I had to create. Key CBE assessment design principles. CBE assessments work best when there's clear, explicit stated purpose. Can't express this enough, strong enough. It needs to be strong, right? Why are they doing this? From the adult learner perspective, why are they doing it? What are they going to get out of the deal? It goes so far towards their motivation. The assessment is developed in a backward design. We start with the competency, then we go to the assessment, and third, we build a curriculum around that. Right? So what does the employer want? That's down here. Internal and external stakeholders contribute in the competency development. Now, it may seem pretty obvious to you what the competency should be. Oh, they should come out of the program and be able to build it and put a roofing system in. Question is, that came from your world. Now, but the people that are actually hiring the students, what about their world? Because they may give you a different answer. They may say, no, we need people that can do sheetrock, right? Or we need somebody that can do all these things, right? So the point is we got to get input. Formative assessments drive competency and the summative assessment. So we're going to talk a smidgen about formative and summative assessments. Formative assessments are those small evaluations we do, right? They build us up to the final product, right? The summative is the big enchilada, right? All right, so assessment types. There's performance-based, where we're doing presentations, papers, projects, etc. I remember I had a science class. I had to evaluate the efficiency of paper towels. And you'd be amazed how complex that was. I learned a lot doing it. Requires grading, being an instructor using a pass, no pass rubric like you just saw. Objective-based, timed examinations or tests. So WGU also has a process where you can do a pre-test. You can go in when you first start the class and you can do a pre-test under a time format. And if you get 80% or greater, they'll let you go right to the final test. Now, the way that worked for me is I typically if it was anything related to business, I would take the pre-test and I would get a 60 or 70%. That wasn't enough to go take the final test. So ultimately, I had to go back, study the areas of concern, the areas that I knew I was weak on, then I would pre-test again, my score would come up. It would be a completely different set of questions. And then when I was ready, I could take the final. Now, by the time I was done, I had dug pretty deep. And it actually worked well. Now, the key to this is you're under a time element, right? I think that's important. 80% was the pass rate there. Authentic is when we base it very similar, where it's, maybe something done in conjunction with an employer, right? Where you're doing real world stuff, right? Formative assessments, they're typically a diagnostic tool. We do formative assessments all the time. If you're not familiar with the term, those are those little quizzes, right? Those are formative, right? And we're judging how well they're able to do that piece of the puzzle. Summative is the big picture, used to determine whether or competency has been achieved. The competency demonstrated should be consistent with industry expectations. We can't remove our focus from industry. Utilized as a course level, final or capstone, which feeds into a program level final or capstone. So here's an example. Here's your typical curriculum flow, right? Here's course 1, here's course 2, and here's course 3. Notice we're doing this rotational thing here. Assessment of instruction, technical literature, multimedia, receive instruction, observe, demo, practice. And the arrows are doing a circular fashion. Now, the student is doing this as they're preparing to work towards those assessments. They think they're ready, and they submit their assessment. Or maybe it's something they have to present to you personally as an instructor. The accumulation of those leads to be able to achieve the summative assessment. While they're getting ready for the summative assessment, they very likely have to go back here again. Right? When they're ready for the summative, that gets them out of that class. Right? That's when they're done. Then they move on to the next class and the next class. And then we go to the program assessment. Now, this is an area that at my observation at the college level, we completely ignored it. When you do your curriculum work in CurricuNet, it asks for a program SLO. But there's no work required to achieve the SLO. And this is important in CBE because if you can't get through that high level assessment, remember, pass or fail, right? You can't get here. If you're able to get through this one, but you can't get through this class, you're stuck until you get that done, right? You've got to get all of those criteria addressed. So you keep practicing and practicing. Same thing could happen here in the third class. And so finally, your final roadblock is the program. Right? You're not ready to go meet that employer until you've passed this last roadblock. Now, the reason I bring this up is because one of the objections to CBE is the idea that, if students can go through quickly, if they can go through quickly, they're not going to learn. They're cheating the system. I've got other students that are putting in, I got this other class that is the traditional time method, right? So they're putting in their hours, right? And this person isn't. So this is the assurance that they're not cheating anybody. They comprehensively demonstrated that they're capable, right? Which allowed them to move on. They weren't allowed to get a C and say that's okay. They had to maintain a very high level all the way through. So that provides the safety relief, the mechanism to keep people from passing through when they really don't deserve to go through. After all, when we set a learning outcome at a program level, we're saying this is what the student should be able to do, right? So whether or not it took them hours and hours and hours or an hour, they're both have achieved the same thing. Does that make sense to everybody? All right, got it. Now, I think one of the and most important pieces, and I've mentioned it previously to the CBE program, is the capstone. I think it's worthy of its own class. I mentioned earlier at WGU, I wrote a 200-page business plan. It's a summative assessment. I think it's very important, provides clear vision as to what the end goal is. In my classes, the very first thing I do, and I'm not teaching, I have basically a hybrid version, when I used to teach, hybrid version of CBE, the best I can to work within our system, right? So I'm holding the students at a pretty high level, and they're having to document all their work, right? And we're providing, and they have a capstone assignment for every class. If they can't demonstrate proficiency in their capstone, which is basically a demonstration of all the labs they went through, they're going to fall short in the class. So I show them that from the very beginning. Here's where you're going to go. And here's why. These are what our employers are going to do with you once you know how to do this. Introduce the capstone on day one for maximum adult learner motivation. All formative assessments point towards the capstone. Right? Everything's got to point in the same direction. The capstone should be worthy of its own prerequisite course. All right, so that's CBE, and I got 2 minutes left. You know, any chat questions? Oh, did we lose our chat person? I think,
Right here.
oh, are we good?
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions?
I'll run a question by you. Great presentation.
Thank you.
Last fall semester, over 3 classes, I lost over a dozen students.
Mhm.
And most of them told me they're leaving because they didn't get anything out of the class, not one thing. So what would you propose to use CBE to remedy that?
Well, first CBE is custom cut. I think the audience heard that. CBE is custom cut for the adult learner. But one of the things that I noticed in my research over the last, actually yesterday, I found a bunch of K through 12 programs who were adopting CBE. Public school systems that were looking at it. And I was confused by that because I'm thinking, oh, it's really custom cut for the adult learner. So why would the child learner be why would a K through 12 system be interested in this? The only thing I could think of is that I think going back to the capstone and going back to that program assessment, it's so important, even at a child level, they need to know why they're there.
Yeah.
Right?
That's what I was.
Yeah, they got to know why they're there, and it has to go beyond, so you can get a job someday. You're going to get a job doing this, this, and this, right? And I think as instructors, we have a tendency to not want to do that because we don't have any control of the hiring process, do we? We're trying to avoid.
That was my first thought, is talk to them about why they are at college.
Yeah, that's always a good idea. Eye on the end goal, right? So, but I think what we'd probably find if we dig deeper is that at the K through 12 level, they're learning that too. Even though students, child learners have different, and that 22-year-old, he's probably a child learner. So he's one, expecting to be guided. And two, he wants to be guided towards something that's going to benefit him or her. I'm being biased here because I know he's in the construction program and got a couple women, right? So I got to work on that. All right. So anyway, I don't know if that answered your question, but yeah. But I would probably revisit your end goal.
Yeah, because basically, before we start the semester on Monday, I want to get some kind of a CBE statement into simple syllabus.
I wouldn't involve anything involving CBE in your syllabus at this point because hasn't been officially adopted by the institution yet. It's adopted at a statewide level.
But you can put it in mastery language. And so like I can share my syllabus with you. Because my process, everything is A or do it again until you get it up to A level. There's
There you go.
no substandard work being turned or being accepted. It has to be at a mastery level. And I've been doing this for 6 years. And so I have that in my documentation. And it actually makes grading easier because it's easy to tell if it's an A or not. It's hard to tell how many points is this thing worth. And so even with regrading, it cuts down. I can regrade something in 2 seconds and then give feedback on, okay, you're lacking here. You need to fix this. You need to do this and resubmit it. And then they can go back, fix whatever they do, resubmit the assignment.
Yeah.
And the way I do it is I have them just either go to them. Even when I do that to assess it, they have to submit everything, a picture of what they did on campus in the assignment. So that way I can track what they submitted, what my comments were. They can go back and look at written comments. And I can grade 50 assignments. And
I think maybe that's part of the answer too. What James is really talking about here is he's setting a culture for the class. The culture is you're going to perform. And I think sometimes as we're afraid to actually say that, I know I was, As I had more experience teaching, I became stronger in that regard. No, you're not gonna waste my time. And you're not gonna waste your time, right?
My struggle is I engaged every student, every class.
Yeah.
They still left.
Yeah,
And I'd like to fix that.
I know you can. All right, we gotta wrap it up. We are at the end of our time. Zoom audience, thank you for attending and hope you got something out of it. And then, here's my information. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions, okay? Or if you need any help, right? So we're looking for programs that want to, move this direction so we can help move them through the system. We're working on it, okay?
You can also email me or come by T300. I'm in there most.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.